Good evening, Shapers. Welcome to another evening of the Engage Culture Podcast. I'm so excited with what God is doing and what God is saying in our midst. And I'm so excited to spend another evening with you talking about an interesting subject based on a book I spoke about on Sunday called Why Nations Fail. It talks about the origins of power, prosperity, and poverty. It's an incredible book. I highly recommend it for anybody out there. Make sure you get this book by Darren Ace Moglu and James A. Robinson. It's a fantastic book. And on Sunday, we began a new series called Transpose. And I opened by talking about the first chapter in this book. The first chapter of this book tells us a story about a city called Nogales. It's a city that is part of two countries. The city of Nogales is part of Arizona to the north. The north part of Nogales is part of Arizona, which means it's part of America. And the southern part of Nogales is part of Mexico. So it's one city, and divided by a very small fence are two different communities from the same ancestry, same DNA, same geographical location, same atmosphere, but based on where they are, the guys in the north are prospering and the guys in the south are struggling. And this book looks to try and figure out why nations fail. And they came up with various things. And the first concept that they share in this book is they state that the difference between nations that prosper and nations that fail to prosper and develop is nations that prosper create institutions that have incentives for innovation and investment. So the first difference is nations which prosper have institutions which have incentives for individuals to invest in those nations and for individuals to innovate, institutions. And that's a key word, institutions. Number two, they say that the state encourages investment through investing heavily in education and infrastructure. And I strongly believe that, particularly in the context of Africa, in the context of South Africa, one of the things we have to encourage people over and over again is to invest in education. Education is a legitimate key for prosperity. It's a legitimate key for productivity. It's a legitimate key to go forward. And one thing in Africa, in the African pulpit, we need to keep encouraging people to go to school. We need to keep encouraging people to further themselves, to keep encouraging people to develop skills, because skills pay the bills. And the third dynamic they noticed in studying just economic history of all nations is that the state is controlled by its citizens rather than monopolized by a small elite. The most prosperous countries, they have a citizenry that controls the democracy, that people's votes actually count. And when the political institutions are in the kind of way that if people are not happy with the performance of their political leaders, through a vote, they have the ability to remove those leaders. And through that peaceful democratic process, they're able to choose leaders. So it keeps leaders on their toes. And every now and then we need to have that. And those are some of the things we need in Africa. One of the areas where we struggle sometimes in Africa is in terms of elections and the ability to remove leaders who we don't view are doing a good job. And then number four, one of the things they notice is that in states where there's a lot of prosperity in terms of crime, a lot of states that prosper have crime under control, and they're not soft on crime, they're tough on crime, and they deal with crime. And particularly in South Africa, one of the challenges we face in this nation is our crime is crazy, and it's one of the things which is holding us back. And it's something we need to pray about and push and believe that as a nation we're going to be able to overcome crime. And then the final suggestion, which is mainly one of the main philosophical ideas which this book shares, is they talk about what are known as extractive institutions and inclusive institutions of prosperity. In studying particularly African countries which experienced colonization, they noticed that when colonization happened, the colonizers, when they came, they created institutions to extract resources. So they were extractive systems where they would extract resources and send them back to the nations where they've come from. And then what happened is, after independence, most African states didn't dismantle these extractive institutions, because when they took over the land, what they would do is the same system of taking natural resources and sending abroad. They stayed in place, and they kept utilizing extractive institutions. Yet they should implement what are known as inclusive institutions, institutions that create an inclusivity within the whole nation in terms of opportunity for education and entrepreneurship. So the verse I want to talk about today is Proverbs 29 verse 4, which says, "The king by judgment establishes the land, but he that receives gifts overthrows it or destroys it." So the statement king there is speaking of leaders. It's speaking of first and foremost political leaders, that political leaders who are given to justice, establish a nation. So the number one role of a government is to create an environment of law and order, a stable environment of law and order, where individuals are able to thrive. The role of a government is to create a system, a fair system, a just system, where individuals are able to be stewards of their gifts, be stewards of their abilities, and be stewards of what God has placed in them in terms of the capacity to be fruitful, the capacity to do great things. And as I'm looking at South Africa, we're going through various challenges right now. We're experiencing some load shedding, which is there's a shortage of supply of electricity. We're having challenges with the vaccine rollout for the COVID-19, and we have various other things that we are battling with. And when I look across the African continent, we've got a lot of bright shoots. There's a lot of nations we're so excited about, which are coming up. And I wanted to take this time just to encourage you to pray for South Africa, that as a nation, may this nation not fail. May there be the establishment of inclusive institutions, not individuals. And that's the problem we have with politics, that sometimes we are driven by individuals and their charisma. And what we need are institutions that are greater than the individuals, that can create an environment of inclusive growth. We had some frightening statistics last week concerning the unemployment in South Africa. Frightening unemployment statistics came out. We have now crossed the 30% mile. We're in double-digit unemployment. And in terms of youth, young people, between 15 and 35, our unemployment rate is in the 70% region. And those are frightening statistics. And as Christians, as believers, we have to intercede and pray that this cannot continue. This cannot go on. We have to pray for the nation of South Africa, and at the same time we have to pray as well for Africa, that African nations also stop going down in terms of economic failure, but let there be prosperity and increase. And it starts with us as individuals. Jesus said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." And one of the things in the blessing of Abraham in Genesis chapter 12 is God told Abraham, "I will bless you to be a blessing." In other words, we cannot bless people if we are not blessed. We cannot empower people if we are disempowered. So you, in your own individual journey, I want to encourage you. Go as high as you can. Educate yourself as much as you can. Get as skilled as possible. Rise in the corporate sector. Rise in the realm of entertainment, whatever vision, realm of entrepreneurship, whatever it is that God has placed in your heart. Because your own micro level prosperity, it impacts people on a macro level. So it is critical that you shouldn't be someone who doesn't go as high as they can. You shouldn't be someone who settles for anything less than great, anything less than significant. Because we are in Africa, we're the church in Africa. We've got issues that are unique to our context. And unique to the African context is economic empowerment. We have to succeed. We have to do well. So I pray that God blesses you. Whatever you touch, whatever it is that you visualize, whatever it is that you are working on, may it succeed. God is with you, and may you rise in this season. We will not fail, because we are here and we are called for such a time as this. I pray that God blesses you.